Quorum. Oh gosh. You see, this is the problem with having too many buttons. I'm not even going to bother with the music. Good morning once and all. Welcome to Property Quorum, a place where people speak their minds and give their opinions, talking about all things property. We are not trying to advise people. I thought I would add a little disclaimer. What we're trying to do is give our opinion. And if this chimes with you, well and good. If it doesn't, write in and complain. I ask you, please interact with us. But today, I have, as usual, the stalwarts, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, and of course Hamish McLay of Search Convey. And today, as per normal, we are joined by at least one special guest. We have two today: fabulous Kate Miller, and of course Wendy Gibson. Kate Miller of the Homes Partnership, and Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club. Now, before we get into it, let me just quickly talk about what is our topic for today. Pun intended, will the sector be labouring under the new regime? And of course, I'm going to throw Hamish straight under the wheels. Hamish, will the sector be labouring under the new regime?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see. But the interesting thing is, everybody wanted something to change. It had to change. And change it has indeed. However, of course, what we do have is a number of ministers who are not used to these particular positions. They might have picked up some understanding of from when they were in opposition. But there's also been a change of the name. There's no more levelling up. Well, mind you, I don't think the Conservatives did much levelling up.
Would it ever level? I always thought it was a continuous slope.
Well, yeah, I thought it was more. It was on a downward one. However, it's a bit unfortunate. I mean, Mr. Sunak got lots of things wrong, including the timing of the election. Because here we are in a couple of weeks' time. They're all off on their 6-week holiday or whatever it is. So they're not going to be able to sort of get round to things as quickly as they would have liked. I think they're extending things a bit so they can get certain things in place. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is that they actually, in order to suggest or give the impression that they're doing things, is to jump in too quickly without consultation. And that's my major concern. They've got some lovely, lovely ideas, some great, great things. And so much does need to be improved, resolved, reformed, whatever we want to actually sort of call it. But it does need to be checked out with the people who are involved. Every action has a reaction to it. Every action has a consequence. And we don't want the wrong consequences to come about.
Chris, I never thought we'd be discussing basic physics here, but, we're basically out of the Newtonian third law. Do we need to rebuild this from the ground up? Do we have a property market that is fit for purpose?
I think the market's fit for purpose, potentially. It just needs a relaxation in the government to stop meddling, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, especially with a new change of government.
Yeah.
I think what will happen, and is already happening, is there'll be lots of new policies that are thrown out there that cause lots of chaos in people's thinking, and the same old U-turns will happen as they start to come to fruition or as they start to really deep dive into them. So I've already seen the EPC's level C is back on the table. So after the previous government wiped it, but they've just pushed the date back by 5 years to 2030. So you will see more landlords exiting the market because of that. So interesting times ahead.
Interesting. Juliet, there's so many, if you do enough U-turns, doesn't it go in a full circle?
That's what always happens. You've got that clash between political desire and economic viability, and we are not in Labour did not inherit a perfect economy, and it's just not going to fix itself overnight. And I think we need to understand that. I mean, they've been described as inexperienced but showing a level of instinctive caution. So I think what we're not going to see is quick decisions being made, or big decisions being made quickly. You're not going to see a mini budget Liz Truss type thing that's going to throw the financial sector in adversity, causing them to raise mortgage rates, etc. I don't think we're going to see that, but it's very much a waiting game. We know that things like as Chris said, the EPC or the SDLT nil threshold, that's going to come down next year. It's going to go back to 300,000. But they are, sort of pushing for things like guaranteed mortgages or guaranteed back mortgages for first-time buyers. So, I think it is a waiting game at this stage because, do politicians ever deliver?
Well, they certainly deliver something, but it's usually something you can shovel. Okay, so Wendy, welcome once again. Your second time of appearance. Lovely to see you. First-time buyers, your specialist area. Now, it used to be something that you can almost say and cringe at the same time. Is there going to be a relaxation and an improvement for those first-time buyers? Are you going to be able to buy things before you're in your early 50s?
I think I agree with the Quorum that there's not going to be very many changes happening in the near future. Labour have actually promised that they're going to be delivering on 1.5 million new homes over the next 5 years. But there's a lot of challenges in the way to try and free up that happening. One of the biggest, I think, is a lot of under investment in infrastructure, which is actually holding back the delivery of new homes. So that will go a long way to helping have new supply in the market for first-time buyers. But personally, I don't think that's going to move the needle enough to try and bring house prices down to be more affordable for first-time buyers.
Wow. Well, okay, voice of reason. Thank you for that, Wendy. But Kate, is it going to be a new wealth tax, do you think? Is that going to be the way forward?
Maybe. I'm hoping that with...
Oh, and welcome. I do apologise.
Okay.
Welcome first time to the Property Quorum. Thank you very much for coming. It's very nice to see you.
I'm kind of hoping that if we can get a bit of stability with the rates, we might actually see some lenders start to innovate a bit better in regards to the products they're offering, whether that's with government support or not. We've already seen, a couple of lenders do some high loan to value, small deposit schemes. If they can have some space to actually focus on innovating rather than just repricing all the time, then we might see some more start to come forward, which will help the first-time buyers, even if the government doesn't get anything out that quickly due to, wanting to do things right without making rash decisions. So I think from a mortgage perspective, the stability that we hopefully will see following this election result will just help make things a bit level for a little while, which could help along the way anyway.
Could you briefly tell me a little bit about what Homes Partnership is?
So, well, I own a few different companies. Homes Partnership is an independent one-office estate agent, but I also own a mortgage advisors as well, which is the one I work in day to day.
Oh, lovely. Well, we do love a mortgage advisor here. Hamish, it just sounds like a lot of hoo-ha and not a lot's going to change.
Well, I think that there is great intent, and some of the things that have been suggested, if they come forward, I really do think it will be a significant improvement. They have already, I believe, carried out certain actions to free up sort of certain planning that was being held up for whatever reason, which obviously is going to create that impetus to do the building. The big challenge we have, of course, and it happens on both sides. And I mean, it's one of the great things about having these particular conversations we have, because it was, I'm not so sure it was last week or the week before, where we found that there's an awful lot of damage being caused by the big building companies who actually are sort of trying to get the work out of the smaller building sort of companies. And of course, they're the ones, the bigger building companies, all make decisions at the same time. If they find out that they're not going to be able to sell their properties, they will stop building at the same time, which doesn't really sort of help. It's not going to get those houses out that the Labour Party so want to actually sort of get out. And it does, to be perfectly honest, yes, we do need a lot more social housing. However, we need any sort of housing, to be perfectly honest. And I do get the intent, if we're not very, very careful, it's going to make things difficult, particularly for the type of work that Chris wants to do, or is doing, I should say, which is actually helping the situation at the moment. We don't want that to be stitched up by decisions being made without consultation. But great intent. Where we're going to see the best benefit coming from initially, it is going to take time, because I think Juliet sort of intimated anything like this does take time. And if they're moving with caution, we don't mind that too much, because they might do it the right way.
Juliet, I seem to remember somewhat 14 years ago when it was all changing over from the previous Labour government. There's no money left and all the rest of it. That there was always great intent then. And
Yeah.
just ghosts of government past sort of thing.
Well, there always is, isn't there? I mean, I act for lenders, and at the moment, and I do a lot of development finance. And where we are is, you found that developers, for whatever reason, whether it was Brexit or COVID or just the increase in prices of material, they've reached a standstill. So you've got a lot of sites that, developers aren't able to pay their contractors, etc. People have left site. And you've got these half-built, half-baked sites where, what are the plans in relation to that? We need real practical solutions. Perhaps, as Kate said, restructuring, But what you find is that, again, I maintain there is this clash, or there's this mismatch of politicians not really understanding what the outcome or what the repercussion of making a particular policy is. And so that, a lot more of that needs to happen. But, that's a personal thing. It's not so much a political thing, because any party that you've got in, tends to plug in the policies to sort of show that they're doing something. But my concern is the overall outcome or the overall consequence of doing that thing. And what we've got to do is look at where we are as an economy. These developers, they're in need of help. They're in need of people stepping in and sort of saying, look, if I've had planning for 14 affordable houses, but I need to increase the equity on that, will the local authority then agree to reduce those affordable houses so that the actual GDV on a project can increase? We need restructuring, but we need people that understand the market to step in and make those changes. And time will tell.
I see you nodding away, Chris.
There's a couple of things that need to happen. Juliet's absolutely right. The burden does need to be reduced against the private house builders, but all the onus has been put on the private house builders over the last 4 decades. And actually what really also needs to happen in tandem with relying on the private housing sector is the government to spend money on building its own housing stock. So taxpayer-owned housing, which is what they did in the 60s, which led to huge economic prosperity in this country, and everyone actually having enough housing. And I think that should be really that 300,000 a year target that they've reinstated for themselves. That's what they should be building for themselves, for the taxpayer, to actually accommodate the people in the social housing sector, as well as freeing up the burden on private developers and letting them do their thing. That would genuinely solve the housing crisis in providing enough stock for everybody. The stuff that I'm doing, for example, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what's actually needed.
Wow. Well, Chris got the solution right there, eh, Wendy? Seems simple, really.
I can add another one to that. They should incentivize empty nesters to move out of their large homes to free up more family homes so that everyone can then move up the chain. I think so much has been done in terms of providing incentives for first-time buyers or new builds as well, for people to get on the property ladder, but there's a lot that's been forgotten about people in their later lives living in larger homes that they can't necessarily afford to upkeep. Going back to Juliet's point regarding the economy, I'd like to think that the economy operates in spite of whatever government we have in place. And the biggest the biggest thing that a government can do at any point in time is really provide stability to enable the economy to operate, because when there's a lot of uncertainty happening, this is where interest rates go all over the place. And we're already seeing that there's an expectation that Labour are going to be boring, which hopefully they are, and deliver consistently. So the market is already bedding in a drop in interest rates before we've even had the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting.
Wow. Okay. Well, I read only yesterday, I think it was, and I heard on LBC, which of course is the font of all knowledge, that the only way that the government could properly borrow is by changing the rules on the way in which it borrows, so that it could borrow above 100% of GDP. Isn't that scary times, Kate?
Yeah. I think it probably would be quite a scary time. Yeah. I think Wendy's right about the empty nesters. I've already heard quite a few things around about incentives to try and get people to downsize moving forward. And I think that is a way to kind of free up some stock that's just sitting there. I think there was a figure I heard the other day. It was something like there's 9 billion empty bedrooms in the homes owned by over 65s within the country, which is a shocking figure. So there's a lot of space that's just not being used already. So I think they could look to do something. I don't think it'd be a very popular policy, though. To
so we're not talking about Grandpappy selling off Saltburn or something, are we?
But I think, the only ways they can, are they going to incentivize, or are they going to make it that they could look at the bedroom tax kind of stuff, but that's going to penalise. So I guess it depends.
I think every time we've heard people mooting bedroom taxes, there's been a distinct rumble from the middle classes. Hopefully
they'll incentivise instead. Stamp duty cuts for downsizers, that kind of stuff is probably the way they need to look.
Yes,
with it instead.
More carrot and less stick, Hamish?
Well, absolutely. One of the things, and Chris hit on it, because the government, they can't. We're speaking about this, and Juliet sort of expressed why we're in this particular sort of situation. But Chris has already suggested that a great contribution to, and it's not going to make it a total solution to it. Other things need to happen as well. But really, that house build, when we actually sort of think of the industry created around new houses being built and people moving into them, the actual economy, it swells up, because new houses require new things. It requires new furniture and curtains and the people to move, and all of these things. It keeps it flowing. And if councils were to do that as well, it would make a significant difference. If they were to allow it to happen and push through their planning much, much quicker, the economy for them would improve. There's more people paying in the council tax and all sorts of aspects of that particular sort of nature, but it does fire up as well and helps the local economies and all. So there's many, many things that can actually go on, many, many things that can happen. And I think we've heard about this thing. If Labour, if this new government can actually just, if it takes it steady and gets it done, because it can't happen overnight, but at least if we get this freed up some planning now, which is great, that's a good thing. And hopefully more of that will happen, and they will make up more sites available for it. But those have got to be financed as well. That's the big challenge. And Juliet explained about that. It's the economy is very, very sort of twisted. If there's ways that it can actually be helped, and if Labour are able to actually do that, it will make a big, big difference. It's slightly different to what Labour would normally be doing. The Labour Party, we wouldn't expect necessarily to get involved with property in the way that they should be doing it, but hopefully they will go down that route.
Wow, what a twisted, tangled web we weave. Thank you so much, one and all, for attending this week's Property Quorum. Thanks once again go to, of course, Juliet Baboolal, Chris Gilsenan, and Hamish McLay, the stalwarts, and of course our illustrious first-time attendee, Kate Fuller, and returnee of Wendy Gibson. Thank you so much for making the time out of your busy day to be here. We are here every Thursday at around 10 o'clock. please do come along. Remember, we're always keen to hear from you. I keep getting people coming up to me and say, another thing. Yes, all right, fair enough. Send the comments in during the time. What I would say is we are here to provide not advice, but commentary. We are pointing at the thing and saying the emperor has no clothes. We're certainly not telling him where to go shop for his next tailor. What I would say is it's a forever moving landscape, a movable feast, if you will. And we'll be here back next week to discuss more ins and outs. Until then, I wish one and all safe travels, and of course, look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.